Getting really stoked as we explore Billboard's Hot 100 of 1971, September the 11th, 1971. Boy, we got some jams. The electric guitar is smoking in this record. I mean, he's killing it. It's drenched in psychedelics. It's layered in blues. It's smothered in blues and jazz. It's not really a hit record, but it's still a fantastic record. It's Buddy Miles, baby. It's Let's go to the drummer, Buddy Miles. Oh, wait a minute. I got the wrong screen put up. Here we go. Billboard's Hot 100, September the 11th, 1971. Them changes. Buddy Miles and the Freedom Express at number 64, up 3 from 67 on Billboard's Hot 100. It's from the album called Them Changes, which came out in 1970 off the Mercury record label. I'll get into some of the album cuts off of that LP in just a minute. Buddy Miles, gosh dog it, man. God played with Jimi Hendrix. He did some drumming on Electric Ladyland, and he was in Jimi Hendrix's Band of Gypsies group back in 1969, I guess up until Jimi Hendrix, or around Jimi Hendrix died of a drug overdose. Late 60s, early 70s. As a teenager, Buddy Miles played with the Delphonics, Wilson Pickett, Ruby, and the Romantics, and he jammed with Jimi Hendrix. I love this part. You get into some of these intimate things at Stephen Stills' home, Malibu. In Malibu, this was in the 60s, 67. It was Jimi Hendrix and Buddy Miles, drummer Buddy Miles, and Stephen Stills, they're jamming together. Now, wouldn't you like to be a fly on that wall? That was something else. And he also played some with Jimi Hendrix in New York City, but Buddy Miles formed the Electric Flag, the group Electric Flag. He teamed up with Mike Bloomfield and also Nick Gravenitz. I'll just spell the last name for you, Gravenitez. My pronunciation limitations coming into play. They formed the Electric Flag. They released 2 albums. They broke up in 1968, 1969, but they played. They played at the Monterey Pop Festival. Reminds me of that song by Eric Burdon and the Animals, Monterey. Remember that? Fall of '67. Brilliant song by I don't know if he gave a shout out to Buddy Miles on that in that song or not, or the Electric Flag in that song. But anyway, so Buddy Miles, when the Electric Flag broke up, he formed another band. He teamed up with a guy his name was Jim McCarty. Jim McCarty was his name, and they formed the Buddy Miles Express, and they later became the Buddy Miles Freedom Express. And they released an album in 1970, went to number 8 on the jazz charts. It's hard to describe this song. I mean, it's like I'm trying to find all these words. There's all these words just all over the place, all these feelings all over the place, but you can't verbalize it. Think of Rare Earth. Think if Rare Earth went from pop soul to doing more hardcore jazz mixed with psychedelic. You might get a feel of this song then, Them Changes by Buddy Miles Freedom Express. And the single, let's go to the single. Well, before I get to the single, let's go to the album. I want to tell you about this album real quick. It's highly, highly rated. Them Changes, written by Buddy Miles, that's on the album. This album in 1970, the single in 1971. And, gosh, I don't believe it. Dreams by Greg Allman. Greg Allman. I'm wondering, that might be the same Dreams that the Allman Brothers did that just brings goosebumps up and down your back. But get this, they also cover Down by the River by Neil Young on this album. Rufus Thomas, they're throwing down on Rufus Thomas, Memphis Train, to cover that. And also Your Feeling Is Mine by Otis, they cover that song as well. Buddy Miles playing the drums with Electric Flag, but also doing some vocals with them as well. Now let's go to Billboard's Hot 100, September the 11th, 1971. This song was not a hit. And quite frankly, this is probably more of an album cut than a hit per se. But it was on, oh my goodness. Alright, it's up to 64 the week of September the 11th, 1971. It peaked at 62. but it was on Billboard's Hot 100 for 17 weeks. For a song that peaked at 62, 17 weeks on the Hot 100, that's not too shabby at all. That's something you could take to have pride in. Tell your grandchildren about it. But he passed away, though. 60 years old, I think, about 10 years ago. Man, some jams right here. Got the blues, baby. The jazz. Psychedelic. Incense and peppermints. Buddy Miles and the Freedom Express with them changes at number 64 on Billboard's Hot 100 of September the 11th, 1971.